Welcome to the deep dive. We sift through mountains of information, pull out the core knowledge, and basically get you up to speed fast.
Yeah, make you the most informed person in the room on the topic.
Exactly. And today, we're undertaking a pretty deep exploration of someone whose career path is, well, it's a bit of a paradox, isn't it? Hannibal Buress.
Totally.
Yeah.
A comedian who, for years, was kind of flying under the radar, observational comic, doing his thing.
Right. And then, bam,
Look,
one moment, totally unscripted, turns him into this huge cultural catalyst.
that's the core tension, absolutely.
Right.
Our sources today, mostly a really detailed biographical summary, plus various articles covering his work, his controversies. They map out this pretty wild journey.
We're talking American comedian, actor, writer, producer, and weirdly enough, landlord.
And landlord. Yeah, that comes up later. He's worn a lot of hats, Marvel actor, real estate owner. This is a diverse portfolio.
So we're not just going to list credits here. What we're doing is cracking his whole arc. From doing open mics back in 2002
All the time ago now.
to suddenly being this, pivotal figure disrupting culture. So our mission for you listening is to really pull out the key insights. How did this witty, often kind of low-key comic become this agent of global accountability?
And maybe just as important, how did he handle everything that came after? The spotlight, the scrutiny, the professional complications. It's a real study in how modern fame works, or doesn't work sometimes.
Okay, so to get the guy who disrupts things, we got to start at the beginning, right? Build the foundation.
Definitely. So Hannibal Buress, born February 4th, 1983. That makes him 42 today as we record this.
Wow, okay.
And he grew up in Chicago, Illinois, specifically the Austin neighborhood, which feels important, Yeah. It grounds him outside that, lame New York comedy bubble.
Yeah, that Chicago grounding feels key to his whole vibe. And his family background seems solid, working class. His mom, Margaret, was a teacher.
And his dad, John, worked for the Union Pacific Railroad.
Right, so that foundation, you can almost see it in his observational style. He's always looking at everyday stuff, the friction with, how things are supposed to work versus how they actually do.
And he constantly plays with that grounding through his humor. Take his name, Hannibal.
Named after the Carthaginian general, the famous one.
Right, the historical figure.
Hmm.
But he tells this joke in his stand-up all the time about how when he introduces himself, especially to women, their minds jump straight to
Hannibal Lecter, the cannibal.
exactly, the fictional cannibal. And he uses it as this funny story about getting shot down romantically. But it's also a really early sign of his specific brand of humor. It's self-deprecating, sure, but it's also smart.
Yeah.
He just owns the awkward association right away, disarms it.
Yeah, it's like tactical self-deprecation. Smart. Okay,
Right.
Education-wise, he went to Steinmetz College Prep.
And then Southern Illinois University, Carbondale, SIU. Stayed there 4 years.
But didn't graduate, interestingly.
Didn't get the diploma, no. But that time at SIU was still important for other reasons. He actually met and became friends with the hip-hop artist Open Mike Eagle there.
Oh, okay. Interesting connection.
Yeah, and that friendship kind of hints at those cross-media vibes that define his whole career, right?
Mm-hmm.
Comedy, music, that sort of counterculture thing. He was building his network, just maybe not in the traditional academic way, more in these alternative creative scenes.
Okay, that perfectly sets us up for section 1 then. His comedy style and that early career climb. Because before the TV fame, he was really working hard on stage, honing a very specific kind of act.
Yeah, the list of what he does, stand-up, film, TV, it's broad. But his stand-up itself, it's not just one thing. You can't easily slap a label on it.
No, definitely not. The sources we looked at list a whole range. Observational comedy is maybe the baseline.
Right, the everyday stuff.
But then it quickly layers in black comedy, blue comedy, satire, and this feels crucial, surreal humor. How does he mix that, mundane observation with stuff that's just completely out there?
I think it's all in the delivery. It has to be. He's got that legendary deadpan, right? That super low effect style.
Totally. He's just reading a shopping list.
Exactly. He presents the most insane, absurd, or even cutting material. It's just described, a trip to the grocery store. And that lets the surreal stuff land hard. Because the joke isn't just the weird thing he said, it's how calmly he accepts the weirdness.
Yeah, his reaction or lack of it.
Yeah. And then when he shifts to darker stuff, black comedy or satire, that same deadpan makes it sound less like he's preaching and more like he's just stating facts. Uncomfortable facts, maybe, but just facts.
And his subject matter is just as wide-ranging. I mean, you look at the topics he hits. African-American culture, politics, race relations.
Heavy stuff.
But then, like, right alongside that, discussions about food, pop culture, just everyday life annoyances, he can pivot from, like, a really sharp critique of systemic issues to this super specific long bit about some weird snack he found.
The sources mention things like self-deprecation, human sexuality, religion, but also the streets. That mix highlights that tension again, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, he's clearly this smart, intellectual guy, an award-winning writer, he uses high-level critique. But his whole delivery, his perspective, it feels rooted in that authentic, kind of unglamorous Chicago thing. He talks about big societal ideas, but keeps it grounded, approachable.
And that authenticity, that came from the early years, right? The grind started at an open mic, 2002. A full decade of work before things really
Right.
took off.
Long grind. But you start seeing the recognition build up steadily. Like in 2007, he won Chicago's Funniest Person. That was a contest run by Time Out Chicago.
Winning your local scene like that, that's big. That's often the toughest crowd.
Absolutely. And proving you can own that room, that gives you confidence. And it clearly got noticed outside Chicago pretty quickly. Because by 2010, Variety puts him on their 10 comics to watch list.
Okay, so that's the industry really starting to pay attention. They see something unique.
Definitely. And his material is getting polished too. First album, My Name Is Hannibal, that dropped in July 2010.
Oh.
But the second one, Animal Furnace, in 2012. That felt like a bigger step. It got aired as a Comedy Central special,
Yeah.
got good reviews, really raised his profile beyond just the hardcore comedy club scene.
Yeah, it cemented him as a serious stand-up force.
Yeah.
And that same year, 2012, he wins Best Club Comic at the American Comedy Awards. So he's mastering the live stage.
He is. But what's wild is, while his stand-up is taking off, he's also trying that other path, the really traditional, often brutal one, the network TV writing room.
Ah, yes, the writing room years. This part is fascinating from like a career strategy perspective. He gets hired at Saturday Night Live 2009 to 2010. Huge deal.
Massive. SNL is the dream for a lot of comics. But here's the kicker, the real point of tension. He leaves after only one sketch he wrote actually made it to air. One.
That sounds not great. Like borderline failure, given how prestigious SNL is. So how do we square that low output with the fact that he still gets an Emmy nomination for outstanding writing for his work there in 2010?
That's the paradox, right? It tells you his talent was obvious, his peers, the Academy voters, they recognized his skill, his sharp writing, his unique viewpoint.
Oh.
But maybe his specific voice, that deadpan, maybe slightly slower burn surrealism, just didn't quite fit the SNL machine. The live show, immediate laughs, broad appeal. Maybe the system just couldn't figure out how to use him effectively.
So the talent was there, but the fit wasn't.
Exactly. The industry saw the skill, but the outlet wasn't right, which kind of tells you his big success probably had to come somewhere he had more control. Somewhere his voice could be the main thing, not squeezed into a format.
Okay, so SNL doesn't quite work out. He moves over to 30 Rock pretty quickly for their 5th season starting September 2010.
Another great room. Tina Fey, Robert Carlock. Smart comedy.
But again, relatively short stints. Leaves after about 6 months. Still gets recognition, though, a WGA nomination for 30 Rock in 2012.
Yeah, that 30 Rock period, even though it was short, feels strategically really important. Because that's where he starts transitioning more visibly into acting.
Right, he started appearing on screen.
Yeah, while he was writing. Just small parts, background roles mostly. Across 9 episodes between 2010 and 2012, characters literally named Gus. Homeless guy, bum. But man, he was getting comfortable on camera, building that screen presence. Even if he was playing like the most marginal characters imaginable, he was already shifting from just being the guy in the background writing jokes to being a guy in the foreground performing.
And that shift pays off almost right away with those TV roles that really cemented his public image and, importantly, showed off that comedic range we talked about.
For sure. The first huge one, starting 2012, runs all the way to 2020. That's co-starring on Adult Swim's The Eric Andre Show.
Oh, man, that show is just pure chaos. An anti-talk show.
Complete anarchic surrealism. And Hannibal's role there was absolutely essential.
What was his function? Because Eric Andre is just a wrecking ball.
Hannibal was the anchor, the counterpoint. He was the pocket of sanity reacting, often with confusion or just quiet resignation, to the utter madness unfolding around him.
The straight man, but like dialed way down.
Exactly. The meta joke was that the co-host, Buress, was almost too good, too grounded, too smart to even be on this train wreck of a show. He was constantly questioning the whole premise, trying to figure out what was going on.
And that performance actually got him an award, right?
Yeah. Hilariously, he won Best Talk Show Host at the Adult Swim Awards in 2014, which is just perfect irony for the guy who always seemed like he wanted to escape the host chair.
Okay, so he nails the surreal cult comedy thing. But strategically, you can't just be the weird guy on Adult Swim if you want broader appeal. He needed something else.
He needed to show he could be relatable, maybe even lovable. And that's where Lincoln Rice comes in, on Comedy Central's Broad City.
Lincoln the dentist. Such a great character.
Totally. Appeared in 29 episodes, 2014 to 2019. And Lincoln was the perfect balance to the Eric Andre persona. He was this friendly, super reliable, genuinely warm guy, a dentist.
Yeah, stable, dependable.
It showed off his ability to really ground a character, deliver lines with this underlying kindness, even when the lines themselves were maybe a bit strange or delivered with that signature Buress deadpan.
So you had this duality, the stable, sweet friend on Broad City, and the totally bewildered, maybe slightly hostile participant on Eric Andre.
Exactly. It made him incredibly versatile.
Yeah.
Showed he could handle different tones, different types of comedy, really set him up for more mainstream stuff.
He even tried his own show for a bit, right? Went with Hannibal Buress on Comedy Central. He created it, executive produced.
Yeah, that was brief, but it showed ambition. By 2014, he wasn't just a working comic anymore. He was this recognizable, multi-talented figure across stand-up, writing, acting, really well-rounded.
All that groundwork laid. The Emmy nom, the cult hit show, the beloved character role.
Yeah, a solid career built piece by piece.
And then it all gets kind of overshadowed, or at least massively reframed, by one single insane cultural moment. Which brings us neatly to section 2, the cultural tipping point, the Bill Cosby routine.
This is where everything changes, where Buress goes from being a comedian people liked to being something else entirely, a genuine cultural disruptor.
Okay, let's set the scene carefully here, because the context is everything. The date, October 16th, 2014.
The place, the Trocadero. It's a club, maybe medium-sized, in Philadelphia.
And the crucial detail about Philly.
It's Bill Cosby's hometown, his backyard, essentially.
Now, what's absolutely vital for people to get, and our sources are clear on this wasn't some new bit he suddenly decided to try out that night.
Not at all. He had apparently been doing this same routine, talking about the sexual assault allegations against Cosby, for about 6 months before this.
6 months, with little reaction.
Pretty much.
Oh.
It wasn't making headlines. It was just part of his act. Consistent material, not some, calculated attack planned for Philly.
So why that night? Why did it suddenly explode? What was the core of the joke that finally cut through?
The routine, fundamentally, was about hypocrisy. Cosby's public image versus, the allegations.
Right. Cosby had spent years building this persona as America's dad, but also as this kind of moral authority figure.
Especially within the Black community. Buress specifically called out Cosby's habit of talking down to young Black men, criticizing their clothes, their language, their lifestyle, demanding personal responsibility.
While these allegations were lurking in the background, so Buress was essentially saying Cosby had lost the right to preach.
Precisely. He connected the public moralizing to the private allegations. And the key line, the one that just detonated, Buress basically cuts through all the respectability politics and says, flat out, yeah, but you raped women, Bill Cosby, so that kind of brings you down a couple notches.
Wow, just direct. No easing into it.
Direct. Blunt. It punctured that carefully crafted image instantly. It took this thing that people maybe knew about, whispered about, read about in less mainstream places, and just shoved it right into the spotlight in a comedy club.
And the audience reaction in Philly, in Cosby's town? They were shocked, right? Disbelieving. That kind of denial that had protected Cosby for so long.
Yeah, you can hear it in the recordings, that gasp, the uncertainty. But Buress didn't back down. He didn't soften it. Instead, he did something else. He gave them homework.
The instruction. Yeah, this became legendary.
He told the audience, basically, stop being shocked, start looking. He said, very pointedly, when you get home tonight, just Google Bill Cosby rape.
Just Google it.
Simple command, but absolutely brilliant, because it turned skepticism into action. It weaponized the audience's own phones, their own internet access. It put the burden of proof back on them. It wasn't just a joke anymore. It was a direct call to digital investigation.
And that digital call to action?
Yeah.
That changed everything. Someone recorded the set.
Yep. Cell phone recording. It got posted on the website of Philadelphia Magazine.
And from there, viral doesn't even begin to cover it.
It just exploded. Catastrophically for Cosby. Suddenly, the media couldn't ignore it anymore. That joke, that recording, it forced this massive media firestorm. People finally started asking Loudy, how did Cosby keep this Teflon image for so long when these accusations had been public in some form or another for over a decade?
Burris's joke basically broke the dam. All those allegations, which had been kind of contained in legal documents or activist circles or occasional news reports.
Suddenly they were front-page news everywhere. Buress was widely praised, maybe grudgingly by some, but praised for dragging this whole thing out into the mainstream public consciousness, forcing a moment of accountability that, frankly, reshaped conversations about celebrity, power, and belief.
It was huge, and you can see how deeply ingrained that moment became in the culture just a year later, right? At the Mark Twain Prize ceremony in 2015.
Yeah, Eddie Murphy, who famously had refused to play Cosby years earlier in an SNL sketch. Murphy comes back to the stage. Big comeback moment.
And what does he do?
He does a Cosby impersonation. And in the impersonation, he mockingly threatens Hannibal Buress's life for telling jokes about him.
Whoa.
It confirmed it, right? In the public mind, Buress was now inextricably linked to Cosby's downfall. The guy whose joke started it all.
The significance is just immense. A comedian, known for subtle observations, who couldn't even get sketches aired on SNL, becomes this massive cultural force just by saying something true out loud in a small room and telling people to use Google.
It really speaks to the power of authenticity, maybe, and how digital media can amplify that authenticity to challenge even the most protected figures, exposing that hypocrisy.
Okay, so that happens. Monumental. How does he navigate life after that? Which brings us to section 3, career expansion. How did he use this massive new platform without losing the very thing that got him there? That authenticity. Expanding into film, voice work, music.
Right. Because the pressure must have been intense. Suddenly everyone knows who you are, but maybe for this one specific thing.
Did he shy away from stand-up?
Not at all.
Yeah.
If anything, he seemed to double down on his main thing, kept releasing specials pretty consistently after 2014.
Okay, like what?
Well, there was Live from Chicago in 2014, right after the Cosby thing really hit. Then comedy Camisado in 2016, Hannibal Takes Edinburgh also in 2016, and more recently, Miami Nights in 2020.
And he started his podcast too, right? Handsome Rambler.
Yep, launched that in October 2016. Gave him another outlet, maybe more intimate, conversational for his kind of wandering thoughts and observations. Less pressure than a big special, maybe.
So stand-up continues. But the big shift, professionally, you could argue, was really leaning into acting. Getting roles in big movies, mainstream stuff that kind of capitalized on that deadpan, slightly confused persona he had.
Definitely. He became that go-to guy for the funny, reliable supporting role in studio comedies, like Officer Watkins in the Neighbors movies.
Right. Neighbors in 2014, and the sequel, Neighbors 2, in 2016. Perfect casting, that calm but slightly absurd presence.
Yeah. And then, crucially, he gets into the big franchises, which really cements his Hollywood status, his bankability. He lands in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Has Coach Wilson?
Coach Wilson in Spider-Man, Homecoming in 2017.
Oh.
And he came back for Spider-Man, No Way Home in 2021.
Being in the MCU, that's a different level of fame and visibility.
It is. But what's really telling about Buress's whole approach to this massive Hollywood machine is that story about the Spider-Man Homecoming premiere.
Oh, yeah, the lookalike story. It's perfect Buress. So what happened? He couldn't make the premiere.
Right, he was apparently busy filming another movie, Tag. So standard celebrity problem, scheduling conflict. Most people would just send regrets, maybe post something online.
But not Hannibal.
Nope. He hired a lookalike to go to the premiere in his place.
Okay.
But here's the punchline, according to the sources. The guy he hired didn't really look like him. Like, at all. Yeah. It was this blatant, almost performance art move. Like a public commentary on how absurd celebrity obligations are, how fake red carpets can be. He turned a simple scheduling issue into this weird public prank.
That is amazing. Where did he even find this guy?
Apparently, he'd used the same guy before in some video he made for the MTV Movie Awards, so it wasn't totally random, but still.
Yeah.
It just shows how he uses his platform, his connections, to constantly mess with expectations of what a famous person is supposed to do. He's always slightly outside the system, even when he's inside it.
Love that. Okay, so besides the franchises, other big roles.
Yeah, he kept popping up in those ensemble comedies. Dave the Tech in Baywatch in 2017.
Okay.
Kevin Sable in Tag in 2018, the movie he was filming, instead of going to the Spider-Man premiere.
Right.
And Frank in Blockers, also 2018. These roles kind of solidified his brand. Dry wit, slightly off-kilter, reliable supporting player. He could bring that unique energy to big-budget movies.
And his versatility kept going, right? Voice acting became a big thing for him, too, which Maybe let him show that warmer side we saw a bit with Lincoln on Broad City.
Absolutely. He's done a ton of animation. He was in the Angry Birds movie in 2016,
Uh-huh.
and he was Buddy, the dachshund, in The Secret Life of Pets, both the 2016 original and the 2019 sequel.
But yeah, I remember him. Kind of reliable, a bit anxious.
Yeah, a perfect voice role for him. Provides that familiar, funny contrast to all the cartoon craziness. He's also done voices for shows like Bob's Burgers. And more recently, he was Genghis Frog in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem.
He's everywhere, even video games.
Yep. Did a cameo as himself on the Flylow FM radio station in Grand Theft Auto V way back in 2013. And he voiced a character called Ice in NBA 2K17. He really covered all the bases of modern performance media.
Stand-up TV, film, voice acting, video games. What about music? You mentioned his connection to Open Mike Eagle.
Yeah, he stayed connected to the music world, especially hip-hop. Lots of guest appearances on tracks by people like Mike Eagle, of course, Static, Selecta, The Cool Kids. He pops up in unexpected places.
But the absolute peak of his musical output has to be the Judge Judy single.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
It's peak Buress, so specific, so niche, so deeply reverent of pop culture minutia.
He released a single called Judge Judy in 2020. Why?
Because it had just been announced that her original show was ending. So he drops this track as like a musical homage, a tribute.
That's incredible. Who does that?
Exactly. It just shows that even while he's starring in Marvel movies and big comedies, he's still that guy obsessed with the weird corners of everyday culture and absurdity. He hasn't lost that core sensibility.
Okay, so we've seen the rise, the explosion, the Hollywood expansion, which inevitably leads us to Section 4, personal life, controversy, and reflection. This is where Buress, the guy who critiques society, finds himself under the microscope, dealing with that same scrutiny, that same institutional friction he often jokes about.
Yeah, this section is really about accountability. Both the accountability maybe he sought for himself and the accountability demanded of him by others.
Let's start with some basics. Personal beliefs.
Sources say he's an atheist. And after years living in New York, he actually moved back to Chicago in 2017, settled in Wicker Park.
Staying close to those roots. He's a big White Sox fan too, right? Very Chicago.
Very Chicago. But a really significant personal shift happened, or at least was announced, in September 2018. He publicly stated he had quit drinking.
Okay. Was there context for that?
Yeah, it wasn't just a casual mention. He
Right.
specifically tied it to having had a number of alcohol-fueled incidents, things he described as arguments and messy shit. He basically admitted he hadn't been handling things well.
That self-awareness is interesting, and that timing, late 2018, that provides important context for probably his most high-profile personal controversy that wasn't joke-related, the Miami arrest.
Exactly. That happened in December 2017, less than a year before he announced he'd stopped drinking. He was arrested in Miami for disorderly intoxication.
And the details of the arrest itself are just bizarre. Like, they feel like they could be a Hannibal Buress bit. What did the police report say?
The official report claimed he was detained, basically, because he kept approaching officers, asking them to call him an Uber, and wouldn't stop asking.
That's a thin reason for disorderly intoxication, asking for an Uber.
Right. It feels like pure institutional absurdity.
Huh?
And Buress's side of the story kind of fills in the blanks.
Mm.
He said the officer refused the request, told him to get off the street.
Okay.
Then Buress says he tried to go into a nearby bar, maybe to charge his phone or call one himself, and the officer followed him inside the bar, telling him he was too drunk to be allowed in.
So the officer followed him off the street into a private business.
According to Buress, yeah. His summary of the whole thing was just feeling like he was in a state of trying to get home.
Mm-hmm.
And he said very clearly, I don't really believe I was at fault.
It sounds like a classic case of minor situation escalating due to, well, policing.
And the legal outcome.
The case was eventually dismissed, thrown out. But Buress didn't just leave it there, did he? He connected it back to his professional themes, critiquing the system.
He did. In his stand-up later, particularly in the Miami Night special, which seems titled after this, he talked about the incident. And importantly, he highlighted reports suggesting the arresting officer had a history of alleged violence and disciplinary issues within the force.
So he framed his personal inconvenience as part of a larger pattern of potential police misconduct.
Exactly. And he took it beyond just jokes. In July 2020, he actually filed a federal lawsuit against the city of Miami and the officers involved,
Whoa, okay. On what grounds?
alleging constitutional violations related to the arrest, false arrest, First Amendment retaliation, things like that. So you see this transformation. He takes this frustrating possibly alcohol-influenced personal encounter.
Which he later addressed by getting sober.
Right, and turns it into this significant legal challenge against the institution that detained him. He's using the system to critique the system, seeking accountability.
But accountability cuts both ways. Not all the controversy involved the police. The next big one put him squarely in the crosshairs of his own audience over an issue he often talks about: economic inequality, the landlord controversy.
Ah, yes. This one is complicated, and it starts with the fact that he does indeed own a building in Chicago.
Okay, landlord Hannibal.
And the initial friction, according to sources, began back in 2017. He apparently removed the existing residential tenants from his building
Why?
to convert the units into short-term rentals, Airbnbs.
Oof, okay. In a city like Chicago with housing issues, that move alone is going to raise eyebrows among activists and tenants' rights groups. Not a great look for a comedian who often punches up.
Exactly. It already puts him potentially at odds with some segments of his progressive fan base.
Yeah.
But the issue absolutely exploded onto the national stage in October 2019.
Because of a tweet.
A now-deleted tweet, yeah. It was directed against Senator Bernie Sanders, who was calling for national rent control at the time.
What did Buress tweet?
Something critical of rent control. And then this is the truly bizarre, maybe trollish part. He actually asked people to donate money to an Illinois Landlords Association.
He asked his followers to donate to a landlord's PAC.
Seriously.
Yeah.
That's what the reports say. It was just baffling. And it went viral instantly. The phrase, Hannibal Buress is a landlord, became this immediate meme, like a shorthand for perceived celebrity hypocrisy.
The contrast was just too perfect, right? The cool counterculture comedian known for critiquing power structures suddenly sounding like, well, a landlord complaining about regulation and seemingly aligning himself with real estate interests, gentrification.
Yeah, the optics were terrible. He later deleted the tweets and tried to walk it back, claimed they were just jokes meant to stir things up, get a reaction. He also mentioned he'd made some comments about Sanders' age that contributed to the backlash.
Did people buy the just joking explanation?
It seems like the damage was done, at least to some extent.
Right.
The consequences felt real. He himself shared an anecdote later, claiming that a housing charity actually refused a $4,000 donation he tried to make.
They turned down his money. Why?
Because of his perceived pro-landlord stance, stemming from those tweets and maybe the Airbnb conversion. It shows that line, right, where satire maybe fails or where your personal financial life directly clashes with your public persona. The audience, even charities, started demanding accountability from him.
That's such a crucial modern dilemma for public figures, especially comedians who trade on social critique. The critic who exposes everyone else's hypocrisy suddenly finds his own choices under the same intense lens, judged against the values his work often promotes.
It's messy. And just before we wrap up the personal stuff, sources do confirm he has one child, a daughter, which just adds another layer to the picture. Like, he's not just this detached, unpredictable cultural commentator. He's also parent navigating all this.
Okay, so let's try and synthesize all this. We've gone from open mics to SNL writers' rooms to surreal sidekick to surprise cultural catalyst to Marvel star to controversial landlords. What are the big takeaways from this really unique career?
I think one key takeaway is how he almost found his path through not quite fitting in initially, being maybe too unique for SNL, too specific for the standard sitcom track early on.
That kind of forced him back to his core strength. His stand-up.
Exactly. It forced him to double down on his own authentic voice. And that authenticity, that grounded but critical observation, is what eventually allowed him to deliver that one line about Cosby that just resonated so powerfully. He built a voice so real that when he spoke plainly, it cut through decades of obfuscation.
So the lesson for you, the listener, maybe, is that sometimes the biggest cultural impact doesn't come from the giant, planned, studio-backed projects.
Right. Sometimes it comes from an unscripted moment, an honest observation in a small room that just gets amplified by technology. He really represents that modern artist who can shift gears effortlessly.
Yeah.
He could be the funny guy in a billion-dollar Marvel movie.
And also the guy putting out a weird tribute single to Judge Judy on his own.
Yeah. He embodies that cross-media influence. He gets power from traditional scripted stuff like Broad City or Spider-Man, sure. But he also gets power from these moments of real-world confrontation, whether it's taking on Cosby's legacy or literally suing the Miami police.
That duality, that ability to operate both inside and outside the system, critiquing it while also benefiting from it, that leaves us with a final kind of provocative thought for you to mull over.
Okay.
Think about those specific controversies. The Cosby routine. exposes hypocrisy in a powerful figure. The Miami arrest leads him to critique police institutions legally, the landlord controversy. Suddenly, he's the one facing critique for his own economic choices that seem to clash with the critical persona.
So Buress's comedy, his whole brand, is built on pointing out absurdity, hypocrisy, power imbalances.
Right.
But we live in this age now where everything is documented, everything is amplified online instantly.
So the question is, how does a comedian, especially one who operates as a social critic and whose whole currency is authenticity, how do you balance that vital critical perspective with the unavoidable reality that your own life, your own choices are going to be scrutinized just as intensely?
Yeah. What happens when the satire doesn't land, or when your private life being a landlord getting arrested seems to contradict the principles you champion on stage? How do you maintain that credibility, the very credibility that allowed you to become a disruptor in the first place?
It's a tough balancing act, something to think about regarding the complexities of fame, critique, and authenticity in our current moment.
Definitely food for thought.
That was the deep dive on Hannibal Buress. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.